So the results are in, Chris.
And what results are those?
It's the feedback on our opening chatter.
Yes, okay. What is the feedback?
People say that it's not funny.
Yeah, they're probably right.
And they're like, we'll just get on with the show.
I think maybe we should just do that then.
I don't know, I want to talk about my pants.
Alright, we'll talk about your pants first. They do look nice.
Yeah, I bought these pants online, and because my particular size is hard to find, and I found that it really bunches up in the penis area, the cock and balls. This is Himium Superfans. Hey there, Chris Venezia.
Hello, James Hamilton.
Hello, my mother fans. This is the show where we talk about the CBS comedy, How I Met Your Mother.
We are going to ruin the show for you.
By ruin it, of course we mean we're going to spoil the plot points for the entire series.
And even though we're only doing the first season, we will have spoilers for the rest of the show. So if you don't want to know that in a later season Barney wears the metallic shirt from this episode to the bar, and Carl's reflection cannot be seen in it, then maybe come back to this podcast once you've watched the whole series.
Yeah, Allison Hannigan had to murder him because Buffy.
Because Buffy. Yes.
On this episode, we're talking about Okay, Awesome! A.K.A.
Frickin' tannins.
It's Season 1, Episode 5, of course, if you want to join us. And it was originally aired October 17th, 2005. Written by our good friend Chris Harris, who also wrote Arrivederci Fiero, Shelter Island, The Front Porch, Subway Wars, and Unpause.
A lot of good ones.
Yeah, I like those. And it was, of course, directed by Pam Fry Me Up a Cutlet Fryman. So if you don't remember, this is the episode where the guys go with Robin to a club, while Lily and Marshall stay at home and have a boring wine party. Chris, what do you remember most about this episode?
I remember the subtitles. It's so loud on the dance floor that no one can be heard. I did go back and try to hear it. I think you can actually hear them if you listen real close, but it's so loud that you wouldn't really be able to tell what they were saying without the subtitles. And the part where Ted is yelling inappropriate things because he thinks he can't be heard, and the music stops right as he yells, "I'm wetting my pants!"
Yeah, I remember that too because it was so odd. Like, especially it's like the 5th episode of this new show, and they're doing something so weird and unique as we're going to have 10 minutes of our show with just music and subtitles. Is that okay, CBS?
It was a lot. When I was writing my notes for the episode, it was difficult to do because as I'm listening to it in the background, I can't tell what's happening in the show because no one's talking. But what did you find most memorable?
Well, of course, Coat Check Girl.
Yeah. Now I'm sad that wasn't my first choice.
Yeah.
Jayma Mays.
My future ex-wife. So, this episode starts again in 2030 with future Ted saying, "So kids, you want to hear about the time I went deaf?"
And they don't.
No, they never do.
But he tells them anyway. So 2005 Ted and Barney are at the bar at a little table.
Yeah, the little one.
Not the booth. Robin walks in and says, "Say you're my bitch."
You're my bitch. Yeah, I thought that was interesting that they just start the episode in the bar and Robin just apparently knows to go find the guys in the bar.
I mean, it would have been kind of boring if she went up to the apartment and they weren't there, and then she goes down to the bar. But I like your way better. That she didn't even bother with any of that. She knows exactly where they're going to be.
Yeah.
On a Tuesday night.
Mm-hmm. She drops the bombshell that she's got a ticket into this hot new club called OK.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, that's what Barney says because he's apparently waited in line for this club before and didn't get in.
Yeah, waited for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And that's how we find out that it's very exclusive, it's difficult to get in. Though it's difficult to get in, the owner of the club saw Robin at the gym, recognized her from the news, and invited her as a VIP, into the VIP room.
Yeah, she's apparently doing pretty well for Metro News 1. I mean, she's becoming a long and difficult-to-spell household name, according to Ted.
Yep, and Barney says the only reason that the owner invited her was to show her his own VIP.
And what does VIP stand for in Barney's world?
I know that the P is penis.
Right. And so, like all the gang's activities, they want to know, are Marshall and Lily going to be up for this?
And Lily's been talking to the other teachers at the school, and they do all these grown-up things, like go to bed and breakfasts.
And meanwhile, Lily's embarrassed to tell her what she did over the weekend, which was apparently get in some sort of beer chugging contest.
And maybe a belching contest, too.
Lily's so embarrassed that she convinces Marshall that they need to start doing grown-up stuff.
Like book clubs and cooking classes.
And that eventually leads to throwing this wine party.
So Ted assumes that they can't go to OK.
And Robin tells Ted that she's going to set him up with her friend Kelly. She says she's smart, she's fun, she's funny, she lives in the moment. And for Barney, that means she's ugly, she Uggs in the ugly. But I kind of thought that maybe Ted was interested when Robin said she lives in the moment, because we learned that douchey college Ted lives in the moment.
Right, his parents live in Ohio.
That's right.
Yeah, Barney, apparently if the first thing out of your mouth isn't she's hot or she's pretty or she's gorgeous, it instantly means that you're saying ugly. It's like that kind of thing where, oh, no, you'll love her. She has a great personality. She has a great sense of humor. If you don't lead with hot, he assumes Uggs and the ugly.
Right. So fast forward to the apartment. Ted's wearing his blazer. That's his clubbing outfit. And Barney shows up without a tie.
What?
But he does have this very shiny shirt that I called the potato shirt in the last podcast.
Right. Because it reminds you of the aluminum foil wrapped potato?
Yeah.
So we find out that one of the 24 similarities between girls and fish is that they're both attracted to shiny objects.
That's one of Barney's fake facts, and one of the few times he doesn't say 83.
There's another lost opportunity for him to use 83 in this episode. They haven't done it yet, so it hasn't become a thing, but I feel like there's another missed opportunity that we'll get to a little bit down the road.
Mm-hmm. And I want to mention this, because they don't do this very often, but right before this scene ends, Barney is saying something to Marshall about, man, I never knew that being in a committed heterosexual relationship would make a guy so gay.
Not a lot of use of gay as a derogatory on this show.
Yeah, it seems a little too jockish, bro fraternity type. This seems like something that would Blauman and the other guys from the law firm would say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So that's Barney's last words. And Ted says, all right, Tin Man, we gotta go. And they head off to the club.
So we go to Act 2. Ted and Barney are approaching OK.
Barney says something about ferocious-looking cutlets, which he uses the word cutlets to describe women in this episode, and never again.
Never again. It's fairly objectifying, so I'm glad that he doesn't. But he does lots of other disgusting stuff, so, he makes up for it, I guess.
Yeah. So Barney's plan is to grind up on a cutlet all night until she goes home with him.
And this is where Ted questions his success rate. Barney says that it works about half the time.
Yeah.
And that I think is the other missed opportunity for him to say that it works about 83% of the time.
Yeah. Or 2 out of 3 times. If
2 out of 3.
Mitch's rules.
Yep. Naked man.
So Robin comes out of the club, gets them in, and they walk past this trio of super nerds. These are almost like cartoon caricatures of nerds who are too nerdy to get into a club.
Yeah, and at least one of them you know who it is.
Yeah, it's Sam Levine from Freaks and Geeks, Jason Segel's former co-star.
So we cut back to the apartment.
Lily's trying pretty hard. She's put out candles and flowers, and she's got hors d'oeuvres.
Marshall's trying desperately to fit in, and he makes this comment about having kids that insults one of the couples that's there.
Yeah, he says something about a baby is like this anchor that just weighs you down, and, future Marshall probably doesn't have that problem, obviously.
Yeah, people change over time. So let's cut back to OK.
As the gang go in the club past the coat check girl, they notice that the music is getting louder and louder. And this is where we have this unique thing on television where in the next few scenes, you just hear the club music, no dialogue.
I'd like to take this opportunity to mention that the music is going to be different depending on whether or not you bought the DVDs or whether or not you're watching this on Netflix.
Chris, I have a crazy theory.
What's your crazy theory, James?
I think that OK is a vampire club.
What?
The bouncers of OK, they all have this really big, beefy Eastern European look. That's exactly the look that the vampires had in the movie Blade.
Go on.
If you think of OK as a vampire club, then it would make sense that our favorite characters, who are humans, are uncomfortable.
Yeah, it seems believable.
Good thing they left before the blood started dropping from the sprinklers.
Well, once Allison Hannigan gets there, everything will be okay.
Hey there, are you listening to this on some sort of smartphone thingy? What do you got there, an app? Is that an app? I bet it's an app. There's probably some sort of share button. Could you please just touch that share button for me? Yeah, just touch it. Just touch it a little. So Robin introduces Ted to Kelly, and meanwhile, Barney finds a cutlet and starts grinding up on her.
But instead of that, let's cut back to the apartment.
Yeah, a lot of cuts back and forth here. Next, we're seeing how Marshall is upset that Ted didn't invite him to the club.
And Marshall insults Lily's friends again.
That was awkward. 30-year fixed mortgage. I'm 3 months pregnant.
So Lily, being a little embarrassed, wants to go ahead and drink it off.
Yeah, she says, let's start drinking. And I think that's kind of where she broke character. Like, she was playing a role of Miss Snooty Pants that evening, and then she's like, let's start drinking. I'm not ready to be mature.
Yeah, she's having a little revertigo.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the party guests, though, says that the tannins need 30 minutes to mellow.
Freaking tannins.
Well, let's cut back to OK.
Ted tries to talk to Kelly, and they can't understand each other until she pantomimes drinking a beer. Which I kind of thought was odd. You know, if I was Ted, and I was a little more cynical Ted, I would say that's not a good sign. One of her first interactions is to ask him to buy her a drink, and maybe it's because she knows that they're super expensive. Maybe not.
Well, I got the impression that she thought that he was offering, and then she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll have a beer." That she wasn't asking for one out of the blue.
I wonder what pantomiming "I want a martini" would be like. Can you see that, listeners?
I would have known what you meant.
Yeah. Cut back to the apartment.
Marshall's in the kitchen with Lily complaining about their guests. He wants to do wine tastings and fondue parties, just not with boring people.
And in this scene, if you notice, Lily's preparing some of these very fancy-looking appetizers. And in this scene, it looks like stuffed mushrooms, but that weren't cooked.
She's trying really hard to impress these people, and I think she's trying really hard to grow up.
Lily invites Marshall to a fondue party. It's dipping stuff in hot cheese. What's not to love?
And I love his reaction to that, because he's trying desperately to find a reason out, like a reason to hate that. Like, why wouldn't he love that? He has nothing. There's no reason. Even with boring people, the hot stuff with cheese sounds pretty good, but he'd rather be with Ted.
Yeah, you could definitely read all that in his face, and I'm glad that they held on that for a beat, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Another credit to Pam Fryman for that one.
So Marshall climbs out of the third-story window somehow and escapes to the street, where he hails a cab.
And then after the commercial break,
we're back at OK. Ted is trying to get a drink, but he can't get to the bar or get the bartender's attention.
Yeah, I didn't like this bartender. He's a spray-tanned, bleached teeth looking D-bag. If I was Barney, I'd say he D-bags in the D-bag. Anyway, he's just making eyes with the female patrons, and he seems annoyed when Ted actually shows up and demands service.
I thought it was odd, but I didn't know how odd until you pointed that out, because he looks like he's taking orders, like holding up 2 fingers, like when these women are talking to him. He's like, "Oh, you want 2 drinks? I'll get you 2 drinks." And he walks off, doesn't get her the drinks, walks over to somebody else. He's like, "Oh, you also want 2 drinks? Yeah, I'll get that right away." And then he's just like smiling and walking around, not serving a single person.
Yeah.
Looks like he's taking a bunch of orders, and then that's when Ted pops up, and then, yeah, he looks annoyed, and then finally serves Ted his 2 beers. It's 2 $17 beers, and that's $17 each.
Pricey club. Back at the apartment, Marshall's already gone.
And Lily is annoyed by her guest's conversation even at this point, and she really wants a drink.
No. 5 more minutes. Let the tannins mellow.
Frickin' tannins.
Back in OK,
Ted finally gets the beers to Kelly and tries to talk to her, but she can't hear him still.
I'm from outer space!
I got thrown out of SeaWorld for humping a dolphin.
I'm wetting my pants! Oh. Yeah, as he's saying, I'm wetting my pants, the music stops, and Kelly can hear him. She's so disgusted, and she leaves.
And I only noticed it like the fourth time that I watched. She looks down to look at his pants to see if he was in fact wetting himself. Doesn't matter that he wasn't. She only looked for a moment. The thought of it makes her leave.
Yeah. So Robin gets denied access to the VIP area.
So she goes outside to make a phone call to call the owner. Marshall shows up during that time and she lets him in. Then they change the bouncers and she gets stuck outside.
Meanwhile, inside, Barney asks Ted to check out the face of the woman he's been grinding on. And they have this fantastic pantomime conversation. Ted points to his eyes. She's got nice eyes. Points to his mouth. Makes a big smile. She's got a cute smile. And then he says, "Out of your league." And that's Barney didn't want to hear that.
He seemed happy, and it didn't seem to deter him at all. He goes back to grinding.
Yeah. Ted leaves, and just as he's about to get his coat, Marshall shows up and says, "Don't give him his coat, coat check wench."
So he calls her a coat wench, and she's okay with it.
Yeah, she said, "I could get a sign made." Marshall's happy to be there. He's like, finally, somewhere I don't have to wait half an hour to get a drink. Smash cut to 30 minutes later, they've got their drinks. Their $17 beers.
So now Marshall's got his bottle of beer, and he's happy. We pause for a moment to have narrator Ted cut in and fix a part of the story that he messed up. Then somebody at the dance club elbows Marshall's elbow and bumps his beer bottle into his teeth, knocking out his temporary crown that narrator Ted just told us about. So let's cut back to the apartment.
Lily discovers Marshall is gone and abandons her guests just like Marshall.
So she jumps out of the window just like Marshall did, and we were wondering if maybe she still has some of her powers from being on Buffy.
Yeah, super anti-vampire powers.
So that takes us to Act 4. And a little note here. When I was watching this again, there are 3 distinct commercial breaks in this episode. And I found that confusing. I'm not sure if the first one was supposed to have the credits there and they just moved the credits for the, on Netflix. Something like that. At any rate, I'm calling this Act 4.
Yeah, in Act 4, Lily shows up at the club and has a little heart-to-heart conversation with the now despondent Robin. They come to the touching realization that I'd take a pee in the gutter over Julia Roberts any day.
I would too.
Yeah. Inside, Barney and Marshall are having a conversation in between the beats of the music.
Since Marshall broke his tooth, he goes to the restroom at Barney's suggestion to look for one of those aspirin vending machines.
And Marshall comes out of the men's room several minutes later, very amped up and suspiciously free of pain.
Yeah, I don't think he found any aspirin.
No, probably some probably some cane.
Cane?
Yeah. Ted again heads to the coat check girl to retrieve his coat, and they start hitting it off.
They talk about things that you're supposed to like, but in reality, they actually suck.
Yeah, like cruises.
And parades.
Or Thanksgiving Day.
Parades. It's the first time all night that Ted has had any fun. So we go outside, and Lily's talking to Robin. She says, you have to grow up, you have to move forward. You can't go backwards, only forwards. Robin disagrees. She says, you can go wherever you want.
Yeah, and I found that interesting since we've been studying the show for a couple of months that we've noticed in a few episodes, Robin does look back and tries to relive part of her past, and it's never worked out for her.
Like Simon?
Exactly like Simon. I also wanted to ask you this, Chris. Could this conversation be the inspiration for Lily deciding to leave Marshall for San Francisco at the end of the season?
I think this is certainly something that sticks in her mind and could lead to that, yes.
Robin and Lily flash their way into the club, passing Ted, who's now in the coat check girl's alcove.
They don't notice him or her in there. On the dance floor, Marshall is the center of attention with his robot moves. Lily sees him and smiles, and she realizes that it's the first time they've had any fun all night.
Yeah, and just to reiterate that, they cut back to the apartment where Lily's guests don't even care that their hosts are gone, and they are knee-deep in a high-stakes battle of Trivial Pursuit.
For the wedge.
Back in OK, Barney is finally making his move on the girl he's been grinding on, discovers it's his cousin, freaks out, goes to get Ted and leave, only to find Ted wearing many coats.
And I liked that. Ted's fun and spontaneous, and we've not gotten to see a lot of that so far. We've gotten to see him try to reject adventure.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to go to my normal bar and go to my normal place with my normal friends and a normal beer. And we've been giving him crap about being a creeper in other episodes. It's so nice to see him just be fun and playful.
Yeah. Barney grabs Ted by his mini coats and starts shaking him. He's like, no, this will not be a funny thing. We will not talk about this. And then he says, italics, as in, I'm emphasizing this, which I'm sad that didn't catch on.
You like the italics?
Yes. And he even shows italics with his hands. And meanwhile, while he's doing this, if you look at Radner's face, he just can't keep it together. He's got that same look on his face like from when he said Smurf penis in the pilot.
Yeah, and then the camera froze on his face for a while. He's definitely got a serious case of Smurf penis on his face.
Yeah.
So Ted has asked out the coat check girl. They're going to go out sometime. But before that, Barney and Ted run back upstairs to get Marshall and Lily so that they can head home in a hurry.
They discover Marshall and Lily dancing and making out. Ted describes it as nice at first, but then says it gets icky.
Which is saying something. He shared a bunk bed with them in college.
Yeah, it'd be hard to imagine what they were doing in public that
could be that icky.
Yeah. Cut to the cab ride home, and I love this little bit of detail because it's at least a second or two where they're just all quiet in the cab. You get that. It felt like that's what a night after clubbing would be like with your friends. You're just so exhausted that you just, when is this cab ride going to be over? And then they start yelling!
Because they're deaf from the club.
I was disappointed that the cab driver was a little late in his flinch reaction. That must have been take number 27 or something.
And they're just, we have to run with something. Marshall is upset that he didn't get invited to the club.
And Ted said he would rather go to a wine tasting party.
Neither one of them is comfortable with where they're at in life. Ted feels like he needs to be a part of a couple to do the things he wants to do, and Marshall doesn't want the engagement to exclude him from the things that he enjoys.
Yeah, and if you notice, there's a subtle theme in this episode is that none of the characters are where they want to be physically. Like, Marshall and Lily want to be at the club, and Ted wants to be not at the club. Barney seems happy where he is, grinding on his cousin, but it didn't work out well for him.
Until he finds out that it was his cousin, and then he doesn't want to be there anymore.
Yeah, and Robin, meanwhile, is excited about getting into the VIP club, and then is despondent when she doesn't get in. So there's all these characters are sort of confronting images of themselves in this episode.
I agree. That's what it's all about. So, let's talk about the guest stars. I have to make an apology to Jayma Mays for not picking you as the most memorable thing in the episode. I will never forgive myself. I apologize, Coat Check Girl.
You'll get a second chance if you want to see her again. Check out Season 8, Episode 20, The Time Travelers. She has a nice cameo there. And I have to say, if you watched that one recently, the star of that show is her eyes. She plays two versions of her future self. One where she breaks up with Ted, and the other where Ted breaks up with her. And the dump E version of her is just crying all the time, and she's these big giant eyes that are bulging out of her head.
So this is the first use of the unreliable narrator, as it's come to be called. This is where narrator Ted in 2030 says something along the lines of, "Oh man, I can't believe I forgot to tell you this," or he forgets a detail, like somebody's name, like blah blah, or why Lily was so upset at Barney in a particular episode. He's an unreliable narrator, and this is the first time that it's really showcased.
Yeah, and the unreliable narrator also serves as their catch-all for any continuity error.
Yep.
Also the first time we see New York clubs depicted as having ridiculous names.
Right, and we get to see more of that in the episode where Barney's father shows up to hang out with them, and they have this whole who's on first, comedy sketch with club names. I did notice that Barney mentions his blog again in this episode.
It's gotten a lot better. Or not.
Yeah, you be the judge. Possible continuity error. When Ted is talking to the coat check girl, he says that he hates New Year's Eve. But he makes a pretty big deal out of it later in this season.
Yeah, and I'd say it's possible that he does hate New Year's Eve, but he just made a big deal out of it this year because he was trying to get that kiss from Robin.
Yeah, it's possible. It's not necessarily that he actually likes it. It's just saying that he hates it or that they made any sort of continuity error. I just thought that it was odd. I also want to say that the street outside of OK looks exactly the same as the street outside of a club that they go to in Season 2. I'm assuming it's the same set, or maybe OK got renamed.
Yeah.
Somebody bought it and changed the name or something.
Yeah, I think that was the episode Ted Mosby Architects.
Yep.
It also features the same bouncer.
Yes, funny.
Yeah.
So for geography, we had the apartment. We've got the alley outside of the apartment where our superheroes, Marshall and Lily, jump down from the 3rd story. We've got OK. And we've got the street outside of OK.
I also wanted to mention that this is a rare episode in that not only do they have lots of musical moments with no dialogue, but they also have a couple of interesting camera angles. They show you the OK Dance Club with a crane shot, so you can see Marshall dancing better. I thought that was interesting. You don't see that often in sitcoms.
So our character motivations, we've got Ted. He was excited about going to OK and meeting Robin's friend Kelly, but he ends up having a better night with the coat check girl.
Robin, meanwhile, is happy to get perks for being a VIP, but found that she's not that very big of a P. She also gives advice to Lily, which you and I disagree on whether it's good advice or bad advice.
Yeah, I guess we do. Lily in this episode wants to grow up and thinks that there is a specific path towards adulthood.
Marshall, conversely, doesn't fit in with Lily's grown-up friends, and he just wants to keep partying.
And Barney grinds on his cousin.
So that's our episode, folks. How did you feel about it? Let us know by emailing us at himyumsuperfans@gmail.com. Or you can join our Facebook group, Himyum Superfans, and leave us a message there.
Each week, James and I get so much out of discussing the episode. We really enjoy doing this, and we hope you enjoy it too. And if you like the show, the best way to help us out is to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. You don't have to write a review.
Yeah, since no one will read the reviews anyway, just, write us some of the fun things that actually suck.
And give us that 5 stars. It really helps us with getting discovered and helps us grow our audience so we can keep making the show.
And please tell your friends about this show. Like us on Facebook and hit the share button whenever we post an episode. It's dipping stuff in hot cheese! What's not to love?
That place has great salads!